But back to Canberra. You know Anthony Albanese is in deep trouble because today no media, no interview, no press conference. It's like the Prime Minister is in hiding, which means minister after minister had to front up today and answer for him. Why it was acceptable to take upgrades from Qantas, especially when he was Transport Minister, and allegedly even asked for them. Now, it's unbelievable. Asking for upgrades even for holiday trips. I mean, Rome and Hawaii, wherever. And minister after minister couldn't get their own messages out today, having to cover for a Prime Minister who I think likes his freebies far too much.
If Anthony Albanese sought or accepted upgrades for private travel, he'd be in breach of his own ministerial code of conduct, and also if he was Transport Minister, in breach of the Rudd-Gillard ministerial code of conduct. Isn't that unethical conduct?
I don't believe so, I think the Prime Minister has gone out of his way multiple occasions this week to answer questions about this issue.
If people have got allegations to make about this, we would invite them to make those allegations, but he has otherwise accounted for himself properly.
The Prime Minister has complied with all of the rules that have been in place for many, many years.
Now, I have to say that Albanese just a few minutes ago put out a statement saying that he had not contacted Qantas boss Alan Joyce directly to ask for these upgrades. No, he had not done that, but left unsaid, not denied, was whether maybe he or his staff had rung, I don't know, the Qantas, their little staff that liaise with government to ask for that, or maybe the hotline at the Chairman's Lounge to ask for the upgrades. That is not mentioned, so we wait for that. And I just wonder how long Labor is going to tolerate upgrade Albo, a Prime Minister, has led them from one embarrassment after another since Australia rejected his one big crusade for the voice. It's lost ever since. And I wonder why he and his ministers don't get how wrong all this upgrades and allegedly asking for them, with whom we don't know, really is. Why is it acceptable for Albanese as Transport Minister to ask Qantas, allegedly, for upgrades worth maybe $10,000 a time, $20,000, and again and again?
When he was Transport Minister of our country, did he pick the phone up to the CEO of Qantas and ask for a free upgrade? That's the question that he refuses to answer. Now, he can tie himself in all sorts of knots, but the reality is that he needs to answer that fundamental question.
That's what the standard is now. Can a Treasurer now, the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, now ask a bank to knock down his mortgage by thousands of dollars? Housing Minister asks a construction company can you do some free renos on my beach house? What's so magical about freebies from an airline that kind of gift alone doesn't count? And Albanese's deflections, I think, show a man who's just lashing out. Has lost it. I have an update on that, by the way. I mean, yesterday I showed you Albanese attacking the journalist who broke this story, Joe Aston, falsely claiming that Aston hadn't admitted he once worked for the Liberals, as I showed you. He'd done that in the very first sentence of his new book. But Albanese also had a whack at the opposition leader, saying Peter Dutton was worse.
I didn't have to declare any flights on private jets owned by billionaires like Gina Rinehart because I haven't engaged in it. As simple as that. And it's up to Mr Dutton to explain how those flights were organised to private parties.
Well, actually, Dutton flew 3 times on Rinehart's planes, or on planes hired by her. One was to get to the Bali bombing commemoration in Sydney after the Albanese government turned him down for the VIP plane going there. And twice she flew him off to Western Australia, to the remote Pilbara, to attend a function and a party for that he'd otherwise wouldn't have been able to squeeze in. He was there very briefly. Now, you might not look like that look, but here's the difference. Dutton was doing Rinehart a favour with those 2 flights by going. It wasn't the other way around. And it was work. It was not like, fly me to Honolulu or fly me and my son to Rome. Joining me is the political panel, Cameron Milner, former Chief of Staff to Labor leader Bill Shorten, now Director of GXO Strategies, and Michael Costa, former New South Wales Labor Treasurer. Cameron, how bad is this for Anthony Albanese? I should just repeat that he says he denies having rung Alan Joyce directly, but is silent on whether he or his staff rang anyone else.
Well, it's about as bad as it can get, Andrew, as bad as it can get. I mean, this is a bonfire of the vanities for Albo. I mean, this has taken 4 days for him to come clean with a part answer. The simple thing is he should have turned it down anyway because he's the Minister for Qantas. The Minister for Qantas was taking freebies from the very airline he was regulating. That's why he breached the Ministerial Code of Conduct. That's also why the National Anti-Corruption Commission actually has to investigate this. If Albo had a shred of decency and had nothing to fear and nothing to hide, he'd self-refer. Because this is a complete scandal that a minister responsible for Qantas, which is hardly a popular airline out there, and Alan Joyce, hardly a popular CEO, was taking freebies from him while turning a blind eye to competition and turning a blind eye to all the terrible things that Qantas was doing to its workforce and everything else. No, this is a scandal, and only the NAC, the National Anti-Corruption Commission, can get to the bottom of this and get to the truth, Andrew.
Michael, what do you make of it?
Well, I think politically this is absolute dynamite. I think that you've got a Prime Minister that now is in trouble politically, and it will be less popular than his party if the way things are going. Look, the perception is going to be out there that Albo is more interested in perks than he is in policy. He definitely has to clear the air. That statement there doesn't clear the air. It basically leaves open whether somebody else contacted on his behalf, and he needs to clarify that. I don't have a problem with upgrades for work purposes. The problem here is the upgrades for private travel, and that's let's not avoid the issue. That's the real issue here. And there's a secondary issue to do with Qantas itself and its operations, and I think that's the purpose of the point of the whole book that has just been released. Qantas has been using an operation to peddle influence, and that needs to be dealt with. You know, how many people are on the Chairman's Lounge list? They ought to declare it. It's a public company. If people are getting upgrades on seats that could have been sold, that's a shareholder matter. And remember, Qantas has just been fined $100 million for deceptive behaviour by the ACCC. So, look, we've got an airline that's got problems, and we've got a Prime Minister that's got a perception problem. And I agree with Cameron. This needs to be looked at by the National Corruption Commission, not in relation to the upgrades itself, in relation to that Qatar decision. We still don't know what was the rationale for that decision. What was the public policy interest in banning Qatar Airlines? We know that it's increased the cost of travel. The Anti-Corruption Commission needs to have a look at it.
Yeah, well, no, Cameron, you've both mentioned that the National Anti-Corruption Commission should be looking at it. The opposition has suggested that Albanese refer himself to that. But now we find out that the head of the commission is himself a member of the Qantas Chairman's Lounge, as is the CEO, as are 4 of the deputy commissioners. I mean, Peter Dutton says it doesn't matter, but what do you think? Can this commission of Qantas Chairman's Club members now investigate Albanese over his links to Qantas?
Well, just being in the Chairman's Club doesn't mean that you're corrupt or that you've got a problem. So let's set that aside. I mean, I think it's an image problem. I agree with Michael that Qantas should absolutely axe the Chairman's Lounge after this. It should be gone. There's a grift that it involves, the graft that it involves, shouldn't be in Australian politics any longer. But no, I think the NAC is set up by Albanese, by Dreyfus, to get to the very bottom of these sorts of things, to restore public trust in decisions that ministers have made. And Albo clearly made decisions by sins of omission and sins of commission. So things he set aside and put off for another day helped Qantas, and key decisions also helped Qantas directly. Yeah, while he was receiving, as Michael says, personal benefit, not for work, personal benefit to get first-class trips around the world. That's why we have a National Anti-Corruption Commission, and that's why Albanese should be witness number A for the NAC.
Well, he denies, of course, I should put it for the record, that there is a connection between any deals he was, freebies he was given and decisions he made. But the point is that the people can ask these questions is exactly why he should have refused the gifts, because of the perception and the possibility.
Absolutely, Andrew.
Now, the inflation figures today, Michael, headline inflation has fallen to 2.8%. That's under the 3% limit of what inflation should be, but that's only because of the subsidies to power bills, especially the government's been paying out, and they're only temporary. The real inflation rate, the trim mean, is still 3.5%, too high to cut interest rates, although the Treasurer, of course, today was whooping it up. Here he is.
Today's numbers show that we are on track for a soft landing in our economy. We are confident but not complacent about the substantial progress that we are making as a country. Inflation is back in the band.
Michael Costa, they are coming down, so that is good. But what do you make of the figures and the chances of an interest rate cut before the election?
Well, I don't think there'll be an interest rate cut before the February RBA board meeting. That's what's clear from today, because, you know, you can spin it all you like, but the bottom line is it's still outside. The trim mean is still outside the band. And we've also got a very buoyant labour market, and we saw those recent figures in the labour market showing that it's still very buoyant. I think you'll be very optimistic to think we're going to have one this year. The problem for the government is twofold. Firstly, if they get a rate cut after the February meeting, I still don't think that's going to be enough. It's likely to be a small rate cut, and while they can argue whatever they like, in terms of the hip pocket, it's not going to make much difference. And secondly, they've got a set of deficits coming in budgets going forward, and that will be taken into account by the Reserve Bank in terms of spending and demand in the economy. So I think they're in a difficult situation. I noticed that the Treasurer started talking about the soft landing rather than interest rate cuts. So he clearly doesn't expect one either.
Cameron, can I just quickly finish with you? I know that you're a fan of Jim Chalmers. It is interesting that he was out there announcing good news, fronting the cameras. The Prime Minister, meanwhile, was in hiding. How long before Chalmers thinks that he'd be the better guy to run the government?
Well, I think Chalmers is the better guy to run the government, and I've said that on your program. Look, the Labor caucus has got a huge problem with Albanese because it's all about Albo when it comes to Albo, not about the ALP. And we've got to get out there and actually fight cost of living. And Jim Chalmers was doing that today while Albo was in witness protection.
Yeah, and when do you think he's going to decide he should take over?
Well, I think caucus has got to move, and I think the next 3 weeks in November are critical for caucus members to have come back from electorates to work out whether Albanese can actually do what needs to be done during the campaign. Because goodness knows, the last week and the week before with the $4.3 million retirement home are disastrous. And that was an election campaign. Labor would be gone.
Yes, I think he might just be saved, Albanese, by this score coming a bit late in the season, but you never know. We shall see. Michael Costa, Cameron Milner, thank you very much to you both.